How can you leave her to die?
That's her punishment.
How can you bear to sit out here and listen to her?
And that's mine. Leave me, Claudius. I shan't move from here until they open that door and find her dead. Leave me.
I remember the last scene that I had with Claudius where she says she's going to kill herself, but we have to remember that she lived in a time when no one had said that this was a sin in any way.
I'm going to join your father.
What do you mean?
I'm going to kill myself.
But as a Roman matron, she had decided that she no longer wanted to live in this hideous state with these murderous, poisonous people.
But you can't.
Oh, yes, I can. My life's my own. It'll be a welcome release. I've no wish to go on living in this place. And you don't have to pretend you'll miss me.
Of course I'll miss you.
And dear Claudius, as usual, was very, very, very upset that his mother had said, "That's what I'm going to do, Claudius. And you, as my son, will have to remove my hand," which apparently showed people that you had died by your own hand when you went to your reward, whatever that might have been.
And remember, cut off my hand for separate burial, for this will be suicide. It'll be just like you to forget it.
And he said, "Oh, I can't bear it." And she said, "Yes, you can, Claudius, you'll survive the flood." So she was quite prophetic. She actually, in the end, knew his strength, knew his mettle.
You may kiss me.
When the series had finished, it was a great success. Not initially, the critics, I think, lukewarm. But then it became a great success. And then they had a luncheon for all the Caesars, Martin Lismore. And Martin Lismore said, "Well, Brian, you know, when we'd had this luncheon, all the Caesars, we've pulled it off. It's a great success. And we've beaten that bloody curse."
It was a great tragedy that Martin was killed very soon after I, Claudius went on the air, because Martin had the wonderful qualities for me as a director, which that he provided the backup and the support and the belief in you and the work that you were doing. And people pointed out to me, because there had been stories of a curse on I, Claudius, that this was one of the things. And this was compounded, of course, when I think only about 3 months further on, Jack Pullman died of a heart attack, age 52. And I remember both Derek and I talking on the phone, listening to each other, looking at each other, saying, not over the phone, but I mean something, saying, well, I don't know, maybe we are the number 3 in line.
And there's another party which I didn't go to. I kept away from it. An extra died at the party, choking on his food. So there was always something about Claudius, about the whole thing.
I looked upon it with the writer like looking through a keyhole at the events that were going on in this family. And part of the thing, of course, it was a huge flashback, insofar that Claudius was writing his memoirs, and I kept cutting back to him to remind us that he's actually an old man reviewing his life and the events in his life and passing some sort of judgment on it.
I, Tiberius, Claudius, Drusus, Nero, Germanicus, this, that, and the other, who was once, and not so long ago, better known to my friends and relatives as Claudius the Idiot, or that fool Claudius, or Claudius the Stammerer, am now about to write this strange history of my life.
With me, the camera is always an actor. It's very, very rarely an observer. And I tend to shoot all my stuff like that, but particularly it paid off in I, Claudius, because I was able for the camera to tell the story as much as an actor would tell a story. It contributed as much, because You can tell so much more in a camera movement or a sudden cut to a close-up than you can do in words.
You used to dance with your cameraman. I mean, you know, you had camera 5, for instance, and he had to crab across, and you had to go with him, and it was a wonderful relationship.
I have to pay credit here to the camera crew, to Jim Atkinson, who was my senior cameraman, who did most of the work that I ever did at the BBC over the many years, and who was brilliant.
There was a wonderful rapport between yourself and the camera, and the changing of the camera, and the cameras were dancing, and so were you.
He and his crew did the most wonderful work on this, and they stayed with me throughout the whole 13 hours. They did every single shot, and he supervised it all. And his influence, his insistence, he was almost a fanatic about the way cameras should be used. The way he used the pedestal cameras was very, very unusual, different from, in fact, I think, all other cameramen. And he actually got quite a lot of criticisms from other cameramen, but I thought he was just brilliant.
Because of the nature of the way in which we rehearsed it and shot it, it was a 10-day turnover, but it was rehearsed in a sense like a play. It wasn't shot like a film.
In a studio, it's all make-believe. A great reality took place. A great concentration like you've got in here now. You can feel it now. I love television set.
Claudius!
It was a wonderful company. We had more fun on that. There wasn't any bickering, no backbiting. Derek was a wonderful leading man. And Herbie was, well, a tremendous director. I mean, he's directed it beautifully.
We had the limitations of the studio and couldn't afford the Senate, so we had to build sections of it. And like the Colosseum, for example, they were all watching Christians being put to the lions and all the rest of it, and not only Claudius, but Nero, and they were all watching it. All I just did is the sort of box that they were sitting in, and did the rest with sound effects. I don't think you could get away with that now, but you could get away with it then, and that's all I could afford. That's all I had to do. And I managed to show sections of the Senate, you know, where necessary, and make it look bigger than it actually was. But we did things like that all the time. You know, 20 people to look like 200, and things like that.
Well done, Claudius. Emperor after all. Who would have thought it, eh?
15 extras. That's all. And when you look at it, it looks as if there are about 150 people there. I mean, Herbie really knew what he was doing with his camera and really knew how to shoot it so that it looked as if you were outside. But in fact, you were in the studio with one pillar, and Tim Harvey, our designer, was equally brilliant.
The BBC had a wonderful, wonderful makeup department. So the wigs and the old age makeup it took hours and hours and hours to put on. And it took about 5 hours, I think, to get made up as the old Livia. So it was quite a process, and it made the days very, very long. But it was immensely helpful, of course, because once all that latex is on your face, you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself at all. It was the first time I'd worn these masks, and they were the best that technology could provide at that time. They were very good.
The makeup in I, Claudius, I never came to terms with.
On Claudius, for the first time, we had these sort of prosthetics, these sort of pieces of sort of plastic that sort of stuck all over your face. I never liked them.
I don't think they use it now. It was something they tried out. But pam, me, Gad, I mean, you know, all the girls. I mean, one moment, particularly, it was in episode 4, in which I do my nut.
He'll move when he judges the army ready to move.
He'll move now, and I'll send Posthumus Agrippa with an army to make sure.
I think that wouldn't be wise.
I make the military decisions, not you!
There's no need to lose your temper.
And then I'm blotting things, and the ink's falling all over the desk and things like that. Oh, God! And he's in a terrible mood, you know, and so forth, racing up and down, and this, that, and the other. My makeup was falling off.
The taking off process was as hazardous because